are the elements of cognition?
Mental process.
Mental representation or a process. Cognition, we have concepts in social sciences, we call them. They're also known as constructs, which are a little more broad, but similar in that it's a representation of category. Ideas, people, events. What are some things that you think may be considered a construct or a concept? Any example? Can I get an example? Oh, yeah, any one of these types of concepts. Such as examples of ideas. A concept or an idea is like morality. Morality is not tangible. It's a concept. Morality to me may not be the same as morality to you. So but it represents something. It represents a set of behaviors. Additional categories are relations or qualities that have a common property. Trust is a concept. Again, you define trust one way, I may define it another way, but it represents something. It represents some type of mutual understanding between more than one party, between two people. Affluence is a concept. When we're talking about ideas, which ideas would fall under concept? So can somebody give me something else? Yeah, or any one of the above. We have ideas, people, events. Examples of a construct. Exactly. Religion is a concept and a construct because it isn't tangible. It isn't one specific thing, but it represents something. There is a thought process. There is a mental structure to what we define or refer to as religion. As under people, when we look at categories of people as a construct, age, gender, energy is a construct, obesity is, I keep saying construct, forgive me, as I said, that's the doctoral person in me, but a concept is similar to a construct. So when you're talking about people as a concept, or gender, what would that include? The concept of gender, what comes to mind with mental representation? Well, that's next week. Oh. I mean, gender, male, female, we have transgender now, homosexual, lesbian, we have to consider, everybody, but gender represents, traditionally gender represents male or female. Culture is a concept because culture, again, is a concept. Again, it's a mental representation. A culture is a category of something. Everyone has a culture, and there's subcultures. So culture is a concept, and then you can break that down under culture. There are more concepts. The urban culture, hip hop culture, modern culture, pop. So those are all concepts. Because it's a grouping that there is something in common. There's a particular group that when we think about it, we visualize something. Events are a concept. I'll give you a general event, and then you kind of think about a more specific concept. If we say war as an event, war is again, it's a concept. So that's where we come into basic and prototype.
Holidays can count as an event?
A holiday is an event, exactly. That's a concept. Again, it's nothing tangible, but holidays count as an event. We have basic, when you talk about a basic concept, and we are on, for those who have your book, page 224, basic concepts are a little bit more specific. Like an apple, that's a concept, it's fruit. Fruit is a concept, an apple is a fruit. That's the example they have in the textbook. Pretty basic. More exact, that's a way we talked about, when we talked about people, ethnicity, nationality, those are all concepts. You know,
When you break it down to the Dominican, that's a exact concept.
or basic concepts, yeah, when you're specific, someone from the Dominican, someone from, you know, Mexico. That would be your nationality as a concept. Can anybody else name a basic concept? This is not at all.
Capitalism.
Capitalism, excellent concept, very good, yes. That would be a governmental or economic structural concept. Anybody else?
Be a concept.
Yes. Marriage is a concept. Someone once says marriage is an institution, but who wants to live in an institution? You know, if I said who said it, y'all wouldn't know me, so. It's very old. Prototype. When we talk about a prototype, if I said the word prototype, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Something that we testing,
Something that you're testing, you know, like a prototype. First thing that comes to my mind, you know, having grown up in Detroit, part of my life was a car, you know, concept cars, prototype cars.
machinery, technology.
Like the first grade.
Yeah, exactly. It has a slightly different meaning in the text, but the prototype is an example of a concept. That's all. That would be, when we break it down to something even more specific from the basic concept to a prototype. So you're just becoming more specific. I would suggest as we take notes and prepare for the exam, just remember examples. You know, that's the key. Remember examples of that we're going over. And if you see my little Charlie Brown in the corner, it says, and incidentally, what is happiness? Happiness is also a concept, which is defined vastly. What makes me happy may not make you happy.
You know, or on the regular concept, not basic.
Yeah, that would be an idea. Is there any questions on concepts? So when we talk about a schema, schemas, look at our little graphic there, can we see that? How would you define or give me an example of a schema, mental schemas? Yes,
Is it like when a child first figures out what a dog is, and they just associate like every animal with a dog until they like change?
exactly, everything is a woof woof. Everything, they look at every little bitty thing that has four legs and that's small and it's a woof woof, everything, you begin to associate. And that's exactly the example that I use as well. An infant or a toddler may have a small dog as a pet and will continue to identify for a while until they're able to categorize. But schemas are how we interpret information and concept. How we apply our meaning to it. A cognitive schema, somebody has their text, can read the definition for us.
An integrated mental network of knowledge, beliefs, and expectations concerning a particular topic or aspect of the world.
So when we talk about capitalism, your schema or your view of economics, you know, how you view economics as far as understanding capitalism would be your schema or your interpretation of that concept. And our mental images, of course, what comes to mind, what we think or what we consider when we think about that concept. How we interpret or understand it through our senses. Can somebody give me some examples of any mental schemas or cognitive schemas? At one time, history, there were gender roles, schemas. A gender role, how you perceive male and female. In the 1950s, the gender role or the scheme or the interpretation of a woman's role, of course, is vastly different from where it is today. Because, you know, they saw women back then, men worked, women stayed home, the whole deal. You see a lot of conversation about that as far as some people try to compare and pit women against each other as far as, oh, you have to work and you can't have it all and all that. But all of those are schemas. How you interpret your, you know, a woman's role, that would be a schema for you. Anybody have any other comments?
What about like, if you determine if the glass is like half full or half empty, like, would that be like your schema?
Yeah, on life, on optimism versus pessimism, that also qualifies as a schema, how you interpret. Some people always see things from the negative.
Yeah.
You know, and they may not really think, they may not understand they're being negative. Some people who always see things from the negative consider themselves pragmatists. I'm just being practical. Well, can you be a little positive? So what images come to mind when you talk about, we mentioned culture earlier, our culture as a concept, what images come to mind, especially at this time of year, when we think of culture? What would your schema be in reference to culture and this season?
Thanksgiving, holidays, the holidays.
The holidays, Thanksgiving, family gatherings, Carnival, yes. Those are the images that come to mind, which you think, you know, what would you include or what would be part of, you know, that schema? Can we see the text on that? What do you guys have? Can we do that here? I can lighten that up. Or yeah. All right. That better. So when we talk about the elements of cognition and conscious and subconscious processes, what do we say mental processes are?
The way you see the world, if you're using the meaning, what goes on in my head, even interpret and make sense of the world, how mental processes.
So if you look on page 225, we had concepts. And our concepts create propositions. What we believe to be, what do those represent? Meaning, units of meaning. What those concept means to us. And those meanings is what creates and feeds our cognitive schema. We talked about the holidays, you know, family. And also those mental images. All those things together create our cognitive schema. So how do we come about thinking about that? How does that process work? When we're thinking, elements of cognition, with conscious and subconscious, which is not the same as unconscious. Processes. When we think about things, are we always aware of what we're thinking? No. Can you guys see the little picture down there in the corner? So, when we talk about, I know, right? When we talk about non-conscious processes, that's what occurs, non-conscious, is we're not really fully aware of it. Our brain activity, our reflexes. Does anybody, do you have to think about breathing? Do you have to think about, oh, I have to take another breath and have to take another breath? No, that's a non-conscious cognitive process, the brain automatically does that. 99% of our body functions through non-conscious processes of the brain, because it just functions. We don't have to think about that. Our reflexes, if you accidentally put your hand on a hot plate, you don't have to think about, oh, that's hot, I better take my hand off of it. That is automatic. You know, that is, your reflexes are a non-conscious process when we talk about physical processes. What are some other non-conscious processes? Examples?
Breathing, or is it?
After playing a video game for so long, your hands kinda, you're using the controller, you kinda
You just do it. You don't even think about it. Exactly. You don't even think about the movement. You may be kind of calculating how you're gonna move, but for the most part, your hand movements are almost unconscious because you're so accustomed. And anything that's habituated, anything that's, that we do on a regular basis, when you get up in the morning, do you think about brushing your teeth? You just kinda do it. You just kinda get up and, I mean, maybe if you have a particular issue and you know you gotta brush your back or something like that, because you just don't remember. But for the most part, anything that we do on a regular basis, day in and day out, those are non-conscious processes. You know, when you're getting dressed in the morning, do you have to think about, sometimes I have to say, did I put on deodorant? Because it's so automatic that I do it, that I don't even think about it.
So it could be something that was once conscious, turn into non-conscious.
Exactly, something you learn to do and it's automatic. It could have, at one point it was a conscious process.
So driving would be an example?
Yes.
Driving, because you automatically know how to drive, right?
Exactly, and I actually had a note in here, but for some reason I don't see it on here.
Oh.
Driving is an example. Has anybody ever heard the term zombie driving?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
I
I've
know.
heard of that.
Okay, and I was wondering if anybody would, because, you know, before there's cell phones and things to distract us,
Oh.
you know, you could just listening to the radio, you can
Zone
be
out,
distracted,
just
you
drive.
kind of zone out, and you look up in your home, and you don't remember the route you took. You know you didn't fall asleep, you know you didn't crash, but that was like, you're so accustomed to driving that route, it's almost a non-conscious thing, but of course you're aware, you're paying attention, but you don't have to think about it, cause you know the way home, all the time. You know, I used to live in Lake Worth and commute down from 45th Street, now I live up that way, but sometimes I would just change routes just to see something different, you know, cause I'm not always a non-conscious driver, you know, take the scenic route home, that kind of thing, but a non-conscious process, those that we're not really aware, but if you needed to be aware of it, you, like you said, you're driving and all of a sudden somebody brakes in front of you, you're aware that you're driving because you got a brake, so you're able to pull that out into awareness, into conscious awareness. But it's not it's something that's kind of automatic. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about learning, we're on page 225. Actually, did I skip a slide? Conscious process? That's right, we're on point. Implicit learning. What does implicit mean? That word in and of itself, implicit, to imply, implied.
Learning without awareness.
Yeah, you really kind of, to learn without awareness, you kind of just learn, you don't know how. You ever know how to do something? Anybody know how to do something, they just don't know how but I just know how to do it? And you probably can't show anybody else, but you just know how. Can anybody think of an example that they would be willing to share with the class?
A math problem, solving problems.
Yeah, you just know how to solve a math problem. You do have no idea how you remember how to do it, but you know how to solve it. One thing, this is probably not the best example, but the children in our family pretty much learn curse words while riding in the car with the adults.
Oh, God.
You know, but children learn certain things implicitly. No one teaches them how to curse,
They just pick it up.
but they'll pick it up. And they don't know, some of them might say, well, yeah, Auntie Kim was cursing in the car while she was driving, you know. But a lot of times children learn negative things of it. They learn racist behaviors because they're observing that, and you may not be teaching them that. And then they learn the same thing, they learn positive, they learn to be polite, because they're watching and they're observing, and they see that as an example. So it works both ways. But you're not really conscious of it. Language develops that way. You know, children first begin to make sounds because they're hearing sounds.
You know, start to mimic what they're hearing.
Exactly. That's an example.
Oh, well, his first word.
What's curse word?
Oh, yeah.
Supposedly mindless, but I don't believe that. Mindlessness, we talked about zombie driving. With mindlessness though, it's not quite like zombie driving, that's more non-conscious. Mindlessness is, you're just totally oblivious to the context with which you're in. Like you see the picture, the lady's, you know, reading the paper, probably partially asleep when she's pouring the milk, and she's so engrossed in the conversation, in the newspaper or magazine, she's not aware that she needs to stop pouring the milk. With mindlessness, there is a need for a change in the behavior, and that you're not aware of. Somebody who could be at a party and I don't like to keep using negative examples, but maybe there's just going on, having a conversation, talking, and maybe saying something offensive about fat people, and they don't realize there's 3 heavy women behind them ready to just pound the guy. Yeah, let's put it on guy. But people are just battling mindlessly. Or if you're in the store or in a shopping mall and you're so busy shopping, you're not really paying attention to your child, and your child tearing up stuff. You know, there's people you stop, you know, you're just kind of doing your thing, you're mindless to your child's activities.
In Walmart.
You know, you're mindless rather to your child's activities. Childless is what you need to be. Can anybody give an example of maybe something in their experience that may have been mindless, or any one of the 3?
Oh, Lord.
There's ads.
There's so many.
Mindless during ads.
I'll be in the middle of a conversation and they'll be talking to me and I black out completely and have no idea what they said.
Yeah, that's because you really weren't listening. Yeah, I mean, that happens. Anybody else? So nobody's ever mindless, everybody's focused and right to the point, yes.
Oh, when you put the remote in the refrigerator.
Yes.
I mean, the book shows like an example with the ads, like when you're not paying attention to the ads and like the things that you're buying, and like you're mindless while buying them, because like in the ad it says like when you're buying sugar it says, or no, when you're buying salt it says it's sugar free, so you're like mindless. But that one's like, yeah.
What page you reading on?
227.
Yeah, they have all of them in there.
So
Yeah, I was mindlessly shopping at the 90% off sale. Just, you know, because we're Dixie closed, so I, 17 pints of ice cream. I gave half of that away, and I'm giving 7 more away. But yeah, sometimes, when you're shopping, you are kind of not paying, especially, and I think some mindless behavior can occur when you do have a lot on your mind, and you're almost like, it's so much that you're zoning out. So zoning out is another good way of kind of interpreting mindless behavior.
So mindless usually happens more in ADHD children as well.
Well, actually, ADHD kids aren't really mindless, because they're aware of what they're doing. Theirs is an impulse issue. So it's more like they're just going from one thing to another because it's an impulse. Yeah, because there's an impulse to do this and there's an impulse to do that, but the impulse that says no, stay doing this, that one doesn't come quick enough, and the impulse to do the other thing, that's the way a parent explained it to me. So that's how she explained it for her child. But that's more of an impulse. They're kind of aware of what's going on. Mindless is more like you're kind of oblivious, paying attention to what's going on with the context that you're in, where you are, that kind of thing, what you're doing. So when we talk about our thinking and behavior, our thinking, we talked about cognitive, our cognitive processes, how we think, the process we go through when we're thinking, what we're thinking about, you know, all of those are the way we process information. Another cognitive process, or another element of cognition, is the manner in which we think, what we think, how we come to understand, how we come to make decision making. So when you're reasoning or decision making or coming to some conclusions in the thinking process, there are different ways of doing that. So when we talk about reasoning rationally, can somebody tell me what do you think that might mean, rational? To be rational. You ever somebody say, "Oh, stop being irrational. You're being so irrational." That means
Like
overreacting, not really thinking about what's actually going on. You know, sometimes when people are extremely emotional, or I think we're gonna look at an example of that. So reasoning basically is you purposefully and with intent have a thinking or thought process. You're making an effort, purposeful cognitive activity. And it's basically like that's a process you use if you have to make a decision. If you have to come to some kind of conclusion, you have to make a decision. Does anybody have to make any decisions lately? Doesn't have to be major or life-shattering that they're willing to share. Yes. Which okay, which assignment should I do first? So how would you go about answering that question? Exactly, well, which ones, sometimes I'll look at which one's gonna take me the longest. You know, because in grad school you have something due Wednesday and then you'll have something due Sunday. Usually the assignment due Sunday is the longest. So Wednesday is the shortest, so you know what, I'm gonna get that out of the way first because it's shortest. But if it so happens whatever's due Sunday, maybe I already have some notes or information on that and I can get that done faster, then I may do the Sunday assignment faster, then do Wednesday and have my weekend off. So that's reasoning, deductive reasoning, which is what we're gonna get to next. So anybody else wanna share? Somebody else, can you share yours? Yes.
Whether or not to bring my charger to school.
Okay, and how do you decide whether you wanna do that or not?
If I didn't charge it last night.
So if you got good battery strength, you're good.
Yeah.
There you go, that's basic. I know my battery lasts so much time. I'm in class this many hours. You know, I have a full battery and it's fully charged. I don't need to bring the charger. So that's a basic, simple process. And this kind of what leads us to deductive reasoning. You have a conclusion. Your conclusion on your cell phone is what? Your premise is that you had a full battery. Your phone was charged last night. So because your battery is full, you know that you don't need to bring the charger. So, for example, I'm sorry, we can name again? Ivan, what kind of phone do you have?
Samsung Galaxy S5.
Samsung Galaxy S5. Ivan has a Galaxy S5. Ivan doesn't bring his charger, and his phone battery does not die. So, I don't have to bring my charger. Is that a good premise? No, because you know that you have battery power on yours. I may not have, and I never do. I always have my charger, never, because I'm always on my phone. So you can't always go by deductive reasoning. The example we have, snow is cold, it's snowing outside, it must be cold outside. Well, has anybody lived up north?
And that's a bad example.
Exactly, because it may not be cold. I mean, it could be snowing, but depending on the type of snow. What I'm saying.
But that's a bad example to use for that one.
Oh.
That's actually a fact.
Well, yeah, well, that's
It's snowing outside, it must be cold outside.
well, that's how you reason deductively. I know that snow is cold. It's snowing outside. It must be cold outside. But then again, that can also be relative because there are days where it's snowing
And it's not cold.
and it's not cold and the sun is out.
Or you don't feel cold to everyone else.
Oh, then warm.
Then I'm good if I'm good. But yeah, so with deductive reasoning is I have a premise or I have a conclusion. So if this is true, if my conclusion is true, you know, snow is cold, and my premise, I know that it's snowing outside, then it must mean that it's cold. Can somebody give me another example? I told you I'll give examples.
Well, a good one would be, since we're living in Florida, oh, it's raining in Miami, so it might be raining in West Palm Beach. Knowing that you'll be right here, you cross over to the next street, it's not
It's
raining.
not raining. Exactly. So that would be like, that, in that one, your conclusion is not necessarily true. You know, it's raining outside in Miami. So, okay, I'm gonna bring my raincoat, but I'm going to West Palm Beach. Yes?
The clouds might be a little dark and might rain later, I mean, it's not gonna rain later.
Yeah, it's cloudy outside. Whenever it's cloudy, it rains, so that means it's going to rain. I better bring my raincoat.
But it may
But-
not
But it doesn't always rain.
Exactly, so the fact that it's cloudy outside, as your premise is whenever it's cloudy, it rains. Y'all understand, you understand the difference? This is what my premise is, this is what my previous experience and belief seems to say. Whenever it's this way, this is gonna happen, so that means it's always gonna happen. You know, my left foot is itching, no, what is it, my right hand is itching. Somebody gonna, you know, every time my right hand itches, I get some money. Well, I must be gonna get some money this week, you know, I mean, that's a superstition, but the premise works the same way. Some of y'all heard that before?
Oh, yeah.
I think the left hand means you're losing money, the right hand means you're gonna get some money. And none of them work, you know, everything going, as my grandma said, everything coming in, ain't nothing going out. That's back, everything going out, nothing coming in. But with deductive reasoning, as I said, you have a premise, you have a belief, or this is what my experience says happens. So if my experience says this happens, you know, I-95 is backed up. Every time I-95 is backed up, there is an accident. So there must be an accident on I-95, but not necessarily, it could be construction on I-95. You know, it could be just that there's a lot of traffic and some old lady is at the front of the line doing 40. She should be on Congress, not I-95. All right, so inductive reasoning is where we talk about the false ones. The premise supports the conclusion, but your conclusions could be false. So that's the ones where you think it's gonna rain, but it may not necessarily rain. So you have a premise, and the clouds support the premise. We know it does rain, but it may not rain. So in inductive reasoning, your conclusion may or may not be true. Most often it's false.
So it's a
Example.
prediction.
Exactly, yeah. Fast food is high in calories. High calories make you fat. People who eat fast food are fat. No. I'll see several of you in here who are thin, I'm sure has been to McDonald's in the past 30 days. Or one or the other. You know, whichever you go, Wendy's, whichever. But so that would be an example of an inductive reason. You induce, based on this information, I think this is gonna be true, so this must be true. Not always. Can I get another example? Anybody?
Like, oh, it's hot today, so it's gonna be hot tomorrow, but then you really never know.
Exactly. This time of year, you know, the rain would work well with that example, because you don't know.
Oh, my favorite one used to aggravate me, oh, he's wearing pink, that means he's fruity.
Yeah, so pink is the color of feminine. He's wearing pink, he must be gay. And, you know, I think actually somebody came out of Real Men with a Real Men Wear Pink slogan. I don't know if it was Hilfiger or one of them, you know, to counteract that. Anybody else? Yes?
Like when a sports team's won, like when Miami won like a couple many days ago, and they were supposed to win a couple nights ago, but you know that didn't really happen. So like that thinking, oh, they're gonna win because they won today. So yeah, that.
Okay, so Miami, you talking about the Keiser again?
Yeah.
Okay,
It was
I
really
really follow college.
It was so sad.
I barely follow, you know, professional. I'm just a New Orleans Saints fan. Anything
We
New
were
Orleans, but don't
close.
ask me no questions.
We were
So,
close.
for instance, you know, the New Orleans Saints went to the Super Bowl, you know, it was forever ago now. So our conclusion is, oh, they won the Super Bowl. They got a great team. Everybody who wins Super Bowl in Miami comes back to and wins and plays again. you know, if that's your premise. Of course not. That, you know, winning one Super Bowl at the beginning of the season when everybody's, it's an equal playing field. You all start all over again. You cannot assume because you did so well here. So basically, again, inductive reasoning is where you have a premise. This is usually what happens. And it supports it. You know, Super Bowl teams have a winning season. So that means next year's season is gonna be also be a winning season. Super Bowl teams do tend to have a winning season, but that doesn't mean the following season is gonna be a winning season. Unless you deal with that whole wild card thing, which I still don't quite understand. So we kind of clear the difference between deductive and inductive? All righty. Okay, we can't see that at the top. This is thinking informal reasoning. So we're looking at informal reasoning. This is a strange kind of word, heuristic. And heuristics suggest where a suggested course, something that you are familiar with, page 228, something that you're familiar with that has worked before. I know this works, so I'm gonna follow this course of action because this has worked in the past.
So like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it type thing?
Kind of, that is similar. This works, so let's just keep doing it this way. That's a good one. And it works for, well, people tend to use that when they're solving different types of problems. You have formal and informal reasoning. And in heuristics, it's often more formal, or rather, I'm sorry, informal, when you're using heuristics, because it's something you're familiar with. On page 228, what is an example of a formal, something that could be considered a formal problem? That's what heuristic? Yeah, or just in general, just because we're talking about informal reasoning. So if you have, what would be considered a problem that would be?
Mathematics.
Math is a formal problem. Because a formal problem is not gonna come from a different, like an informal problem is, I just cannot seem to find my other shoe. Just wear another pair of shoes. You know, something that's not real, it doesn't take a lot of processing, it doesn't take a lot of problem solving. That's kind of the difference. So the way you approach problem solving for formal and informal is going to be different. Well, you can use both. Both of those can come other, you know, deductive reasoning typically comes in formal problem solving. But they can occur in any kind of problem solving, because it's thought process, it's how you think it through. Whether you think it through deductively, whether you think it through inductively, however you think through that problem, they apply to any type of problem solving, or any type of, you know, mental processes. So heuristics, if you're thinking about a problem or a course or a manner that you solved a problem for, something that worked before. This has worked before, so here's the same problem again. So we're gonna try this again. Example?
Studying for a test, you study a certain way to write the test, and the next test you're going to study the same way.
That's true. This is funny, because there's a certain example Ms. Marie and I used about that, yes.
Like in sports, because I play volleyball, so like if someone's going for my ball, that's mine, and if I say mine, like everyone else is saying mine on the court too, so if I say my name, they know I have it, so that works with me.
Yes, so that works that works for you, that's the
Yeah.
process.
Mhm.
How you solve that issue of getting the ball, and
Yeah.
everybody kinda is aware of that.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're in another game, every game, that should work, every match, is it, what are you calling it now?
A game.
A game, okay.
Yeah.
Told you I'm not rude. So that would work each time, so there's no need for you to change that.
Yeah.
Okay, can somebody come up with it? So let me ask you this, if another player wanted to do the same thing, would that work for her?
Well, I mean, let's
See?
hopefully not do that. I mean, because like everyone has different names, so you know your positions, you know who plays what. So if you call your name out, like if you say Misha, they know that that middle player has the ball. Like,
So, I mean, so if, does that same, that's the process for
I
you?
don't know.
For another position, do they call that person's name too?
I mean, they could if they wanted to. So if someone played right side and if they wanted to call their name out, saying that, hey, I got the ball, that might work for them too, hopefully.
See, that's the question.
Yeah, I don't
Well,
know.
it works for you, so
But it's
the girl
gonna
on the
work for
right, you said,
somebody
maybe I
else.
should try it and see if it works for me. That's heuristic. It
Yeah.
works well and successful for her, so maybe I should try it. And let's see if it's working for her, maybe it'll work for me. Yes. You had a comment?
Oh, no, I was just gonna ask her, that's pretty much for people who wanna be greedy with the ball, like, letting them know, like, I got this.
Yeah, I mean, if I got it, I got it.
Another example of something like that that's kind of more, I don't know if I should say true to life, but if you have a medical condition, somebody give me a common medical condition. We have a medical.
Or diabetic patient.
You have a diabetic patient, and you know that, what's the pill they give everybody? There you go, metformin. Metformin works. So you go to the doctor and the doctor says, oh, you're pre-diabetic, which is the new thing now.
There's nothing called pre.
Exactly, thank you so much. And he says, oh, we're gonna put you on metformin. Well,
Prescription for them to make money.
what? And they're gonna put you on metformin. Look, I had a friend, look, 2 years ago, her and 4 other people within the same month, we're all getting prescribed the same thing. Well, now, he said pre-diabetic.
There's nothing called pre-diabetic.
It's
So-
either you are or you're not.
Heuristic processing says, this works, so this is what you have, so we're gonna do this. But what are you going to do? Are you gonna just take the pill? No, you're gonna say, hold up, I wanna process this a little bit. I want more information.
What exactly does pre-diabetic mean?
You know,
How
what does
opposed
that
to
mean?
diabetic
What are my
and-
numbers? And that's where we get into dialectical processing, comparing and evaluating. What are my options? So when you go to a doctor, and I'm not knocking medical, go to the doctor, but always go informed.
That's like critical thinking, you ask questions.
Yeah, exactly. Dialectical is part of critical thinking. You want a reason. If you say I should take this medicine, what is the opposing view? What else other options do I have? Can I change my eating habits? Can I cut out carbs? Can I reduce my sugars? Can I lose some weight before you put me on this medicine? So the heuristic approach from the doctor is, this is working, we're gonna give it to everybody who comes here. But the smart patient or the informed
Would
patient
ask questions.
will ask questions, will want more information, will want to compare. You know, they're gonna analyze the arguments for and against starting the medication. If I get on this medication, will I ever get off? So that's the difference in how the processing. A doctor's gonna be heuristic, because that's how they are.
Don't
You
trust
know,
that anybody wants to be doctors or nurses, but nowadays you really have to question them.
You do, and they know that, and they get frustrated about it because of the internet.
Especially
know,
when they see you smart.
Exactly, but you need to know something, you need to know. And even if you don't understand, just write it down, act like you understand, and ask somebody later. You know, you should be an informed patient. You should be informed about anything. I'm big on knowledge, no matter how small. Ladies, if you're single, don't ever go to get your car repaired without a guy, even if the guy don't know nothing. Just because there's a guy there, they're less likely to rob you.
Oh, yeah,
You know, same thing with buying a car. There was actually one of these reasoning. That's it, the heuristic reasoning. You want to buy a car. Do you do that on your own? Should you ever go to a car lot by yourself?
unless you know about cars.
If you know about cars, because I bought my cars by myself, but if you you know about, but I do my research first. I already know when I get there, I know the base price, the mid price, I know the market price,
Test
and I know
drive it,
what
check
I
the
want to
engine,
pay.
make sure what's wrong with it.
Exactly.
What he's fixing, what doesn't, is it a good investment, is it someone to fix it?
So those are the questions that you wanna ask. And when we get to heuristic reasoning, one aspect of it that we have not yet mentioned, you see our little folks down there, it also involves emotions. So when we talk about buying that car, I remember, I will never forget, I don't remember what this little bitty car was, it was some little two-seater MR2. It was, a Toyota MR2, anybody remember that car? Cause this is that none of you, well, some of you might have been born, but it was a little bitty two-seater, and my brother went to the car lot. I don't know what we were even doing, I think I was looking for a car. And he's the rational one, he's the reasonable one, but he was, you know, college age, and he saw that car, and man, his mind just went wacko. This is him with the car. I'm not thinking about it, not thinking about how you're gonna pay for it, you know, not thinking about how much insurance is for a male under 25.
Oh my God.
You know, on a sports car. Because, what was it? He was consulting his emotions over the probabilities, over the facts, over the details. You cannot do that. These are barriers to reasoning rationally. I'm sorry, you cannot see that at the top. But when you reason rationally, you take into consideration the details, you take into consideration more information, you compare, you contrast, you know, you look at all of your options. We have what's called reflective judgment. I did not include that in the PowerPoint, but reflective judgment is where you think about it. You know, we just finished a political season, you know, we're gonna have another one coming up. All of those ads, I don't care who's running, I don't care if liberal, whatever, I don't like them. I just wish they didn't have to be on TV. But when you're looking at that stuff, do you believe just what they say? Do you take one side for the other? Because I'm conservative, I'm gonna just believe this. Oh no, because I'm liberal, I'm just gonna believe this. No, you listen to what they're saying, you try to figure out what might be true, you consult what sources that you trust. And it's considered reflective judgment. We see that on page 229. You know, people have trouble thinking dialectically because they're thinking either with their emotions or they're thinking with, this is how I've always been, this is how we always are, this is how my family is. They're thinking along those lines. So they're not really taking in the facts. This is, you know, a lot of people on both sides, liberal and conservative. You know,
They usually try and attack each other, so that's usually something that.
yeah, so and attack ads keep you from getting, because if they don't give you any facts or any information for you to research, all they say, he's an ass and he's an ass.
Yeah.
So, okay, you gotta pick from two asses.
Usually it's probably when it's true on either side.
You know, exactly. So instead of presenting information, what can you do? I'm a politician, I'm running problems, what can you do to make my life better? You wanna tell me why this guy's no good? Well, why he's no good is not telling you why you are good.
I hate those things, those commercials where they're
Attack
back
ads.
there and it's just like, okay, where's the problem? What are you doing? What are you gonna do to fix it? Why are you doing that?
Exactly.
One guy they were bashing, what was his name? Christopher something, the guy with the little white hair.
Charlie Chris.
Yeah.
That was, yeah, Charlie Chris and Voldemort. I'm sorry, Rick Scott. Doesn't he look like Mike or Voldemort? And I'm not a big Harry Potter fan. I mean, I've probably only seen the first one. He like Voldemort, just like him. Am I saying the name right?
Yeah, the one more than
Voldemort. Exactly. So, but anyway, when it comes to reflective judgment, our emotions, you know, our previous, this word before, why should I change? Those affect refers to emotion. You know, when you talk to a mental health counselor or a psychologist or something, they say he has a flat affect. He doesn't show emotion. So it's kind of, you know, it's always, that word will mostly in the social science be affiliated with emotion. And when you're walking in or practicing affect heuristic, you know, your emotions are also working with your previous premises and your previous beliefs. So you're not gonna think and reflect and consider and weigh your odds and the pros and cons of the decision making. When you get, and that's one thing, you know, has anybody ever seen a decision tree?
Decision tree.
Yeah, it's like a graph where when you have to make a decision, there's tons of them. Yeah, it's kind of a counseling thing, sorry. But when you get ready to make a decision, you know, just like you say pros and cons, it's just a list, that kind of thing.
A
What do you
diagram, a
need
circle.
for? Yeah, it's any kind, it's all different types of graph shapes, but you put down, you know, what do I need first? Transportation. Okay, how far do I have to go? Do I have to commute? You know, do I want to pay more for insurance and buy a newer car? Is liability gonna be enough? Do I want a car with a warranty? Do I have enough money saved to cover expenses? So those are, when you're doing all of those things, that's more like a dialectic or reflective judgment, because you're looking at all of the options, you're looking at more information. You're not just going on, oh my God, I love this car, I'm just gonna buy this Jag. I don't care that the insurance is gonna run me $500 a month, and in 6 months you don't have
It's
no car.
suffer.
No, you don't have no car, because you can't pay both, at least I can't, I don't know, maybe some of y'all got it like that. Any questions so far on reasoning rationally? Any comment? So what is it to reason rationally? To be rational when you're reasoning or thinking.
Involves the emotions. Involves the emotions.
It involves emotions or a lack of emotions. See, this, I'm sorry, the word you can't see is barriers to reasoning rationally. Your emotions are a barrier. So if you're reasoning rationally, you're being logical, you're being critical, you're weighing your odds, you're reviewing the information, you're comparing, you're contrasting, you're looking at the pros and cons. That's what we call dialectical reasoning. So these things, these words I'm throwing out that may not be on your PowerPoint, those are potential test questions. So when somebody says hindsight is 20/20 vision, what do we know? How many people have said it? I could have told you that after the fact. Well, you know now. Of course you would say that.
I don't know.
You've heard the term hindsight is 20/20 vision. Has everybody heard that?
2020?
Hindsight is 20/20 vision. Hindsight, looking behind. When you already have the answer, there's another, when they call it Monday morning quarterback, and who's heard that term? Monday morning quarterback. On Monday, you know, after the game on Sunday, everybody gonna say why this was, oh, I knew this was wrong, I knew they were gonna lose. They didn't know nothing, but they already lost, so you know, so you can say that. So hindsight, looking back, hindsight is 20/20 vision. You now have the information. So it's easy for you to say, that's how it was. And that's also a barrier to reasoning, a barrier to being rational, because you can look back and say, oh, I know how that is. That's exactly, I expected it to be that way, but no, not, but you already had the answer. So instead of actually investigating prior to, you just go and you'll repeat yourself. You'll repeat the same issue because you think it turned out this way. Looking back at the problem before, that's how it turned out. So when you're biased, hindsight bias means looking back, I know how the problem solved or how it turned out. So when you approach it again, instead of thinking rationally, you're gonna assume that it's gonna be the same way, because you already know. But you know from another situation. Does that make sense? Is it, because I don't see clarity in the face out here. Is it making sense to you? With hindsight is 20/20. Go to page 233. And we're talking about bias or barriers to reason. And you know, bias is of prejudice, meaning you favor one thing or another. Not necessarily, not about racial prejudice, but where you kind of favor one thing or another. Confirmation bias makes more sense than hindsight bias. But with hindsight bias, if you look on the bottom of page 233, is where you overestimate your ability to predict something. Because based on what happened before, you're gonna say, oh, it happened before, so I know it can happen. I'm confident that it's gonna happen again. You know, my birthday hit the lottery, on the 5th of November 1972, I'm confident it's gonna hit again. No, not necessarily. Or you gamblers will do that. They look back and the team or the whatever they bet on won, and looking back they won, so they're gonna predict again and make so. But that's not necessarily the case. Hindsight is 20/20, meaning you can look back and you see clearly what happened and you have the answer because it's already occurred. But that doesn't mean the next event will occur the same way. Is that a little clearer? Has anybody ever had a situation where they look back and now they say, oh, I get it now, now after it's happened?
Yeah, I wish I knew what I knew now.
Yeah, you know, that whole saying, youth is wasted on the young. Boy, do I know what that means. Now that I'm not young anymore. So that's what it is when you have a bias for what already happened and you know that, you know how it turned out. So you're gonna assume or estimate or predict the situation or the problem is gonna turn out the same way. So you don't bother thinking it through. That's the whole thing with bias, is that you don't think the problem through because you're assuming it's gonna turn out the same way it did before, so you may do the exact same thing. Questions? Confirmation bias. When you want to confirm is when you want evidence to support your belief. When you know you're gonna do something you probably don't have any business doing or going someplace, you're gonna call that friend that will confirm you should do it. They might even ride with you to go. Because you know you're not supposed to do it or not supposed to go. Or you're not supposed to go out with that guy. You're not gonna call a friend that's rational and say, you know what he did you last time, why would you, and I'm just using that as an example, ladies, I'm not thinking on anybody. You know, but it could be the same thing with a guy. You call the person who's gonna support you so that you have confidence in going through with your decision that you already know you shouldn't do. Does that make sense? Can anybody think of a time where they might have done that? And they're willing to say it?
I don't know, I actually like getting around to talk me out of doing stuff.
Yeah, and because I know exactly which friend to call who will tell me, now you know, Miss Marie, you know the Lord is not gonna be pleased with that. She's serious. That's, you want to maintain purity. She is. I know certain stuff I'm not even gonna let her know about. You know, because she is that conscious voice. You know, she's not gonna confirm anything for me that's wrong, but I already know it's wrong, so I'm not gonna call her. Anybody else? Something simple. Yes, Ivan.
When you wanna skip class, but you don't wanna like feel like a bad person, so you call someone who either like skip class with you or like I let it be okay, oh, you can go over to my house if you skip. Like,
Yeah, exactly. You know who to call if you want to skip class. You know exactly who to call, and you know which one of your friends are gonna be like, oh, you know, we got a test, we got to look it out, or whatever. You're looking for somebody to support. So when you're using confirmation bias, you're not gonna think your decision through. You're not gonna be rational, because you already know what you're gonna do. You know, you're just looking for somebody to give you the A-OK so you can take a tiny bit of that guilt or whatever it is off your own shoulders and share it with somebody else. And then when something happens, the crack hits the fan, your friend gonna say, man, I can't believe you did that. You know, that's exactly it. But those are barriers to reasoning, barriers to making sound, logical, supportive decisions. Hindsight bias, confirmation bias, and our emotions. So make sure you just indicate, you know, make a note of that. Those are like test questions. All right, we're going to take a break, because that's the end of that section.
That's all we're doing?
No, we're just gonna take a break.
You want me to pause it?